And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger and roll, planet.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight down to SPD off. Bring in SPD off. Off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Tingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, as we tune in for the splashdown of the Axiom-4 mission and the Crew Dragon Grace spacecraft. I am D-Wise. I am your host this evening, but of course, I am not alone. Joining me on stream, the one, the only, Alex. How are we doing, Alex?
Hello. It's a really nice morning here. I'm guessing it's a very late night or very, very early morning in the Pacific Coast for this splashdown. But hey, orbital mechanics, right? You don't dictate that sort of thing.
And of course, it's not just us in the background pushing the buttons, pulling the levers. We have Carson operating today's stream. Now, we are around 50 minutes from the actual splashdown of the Crew Dragon spacecraft and the Axiom-4 crew here. They've been in orbit for almost 20 days now, so I see all the 5x5s in chat. Thank you all for tuning in here. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, I think, as we get closer and closer to this splashdown, right, Alex?
Yeah. Right now they are performing that deorbit burn to essentially, slow down a little bit and have the orbit lower enough to be able to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. That deorbit burn will last for about 18 minutes, so it's gonna be a long one, but that's currently underway. And so, yeah, we're gonna see 4 humans coming back home, hopefully in about 50 minutes from now. One of them being here on screen, thank you, SpaceX, for that. Peggy Whitson, the commander, and also really, really amazing career as well. Lots and lots of days in space. You can see there, 695 days in space. It's, yeah, epic astronaut.
Absolutely. So we're getting a look here at sort of the profiles of the astronauts on this mission. It was a very international crew. Peggy Whitson being the only U.S. American astronaut for this private astronaut mission, but it was seeing the return to human spaceflight for a lot of nations this time around, right?
Yeah, it was actually dubbed Realizing the Return because we have here the pilot, Shubhanshu Shukla. He's from India, and so it's the first time an Indian astronaut has gone to the ISS, and also the first time in like decades that anybody from India has gone into space, right? You have here mission specialist Sławosz Uznański. I probably butchered his name, but I tried my best to learn how to pronounce that. So he's the mission specialist. He worked at CERN, by the way. As a person that studied physics, I think that's amazing. And like he's also from Poland, which again, it's like a long time since anybody from Poland went to space, and I believe it is also the first time at all that somebody from Poland went to the ISS. The same deal happens with the other mission specialist, the other international crew member, which is Tibor Kapu. He is from Hungary, and again, another, super human kind of person, right? Lots of different stuff. But again, it's also that thing about realizing the return, as they call it, which is a Hungarian astronaut I believe there was one in the 70s or 80s or something like that as well. But it will be the first time again that somebody from Hungary went to the ISS, and the first time in decades that somebody from that country went to space. So once again, that's why they call this realizing the return, this mission, right? Because these different countries, they don't usually have this sort of presence in space, if you will. And so that's one of the things that they were trying to get to. You know, with the rise of private companies and private space stations like Axiom, they want to build their own private station, and that's why they're doing these sort of missions, precursor missions to the ISS, sort of to learn how to get a human mission to orbit and things like that together, and things like that, and how to do the research and all that, how to plan that kind of mission operations. And so that sort of thing enables these countries to be able to go into space more often, to be able to do research, to be able to strengthen their own, research and things like that. It's a neat thing, to be honest. It's really neat.
Yeah, it's really great to see all these private astronaut missions opening up space for more people, whether that's Axiom bringing people to the ISS or some of the other private astronaut missions that just focus on Dragon and are a bit shorter duration. Now, they've been up there for, I guess, nearing 20 days now. They launched back on June 25th, early in the morning. And for the last about 24 hours, the crew has been on their way back. They had their hatch closure early yesterday morning, almost 24 hours ago. And they had their series of departure burns yesterday morning, starting around 7 a.m. Eastern time. So it's been a decently long journey for a private astronaut mission, I'd say.
Yeah, prior there was, I think it was the first Axiom mission, where they had bad weather off the coast of Florida. That was what back when they did splashdowns off the coast of Florida, and it was like, they spent another 2 or 3 weeks on the ISS. It was a nearly month-long mission, and we were all like joking. I bet they were charged more for the extra time. Just like at a hotel or something like that when you stay overtime.
I'm sure. And it's an odd hour of the evening, so I'm interested to know where all of you in chat are listening from. What time is it for you there? I know Mr. Fluffy, thank you so much for the support, saying it's 3 a.m. in Montana, and they have a
Wow.
work meeting in 5 hours. Why am I up? Well, because we've got a Crew Dragon return to watch here. There's lots to follow. I also want to thank Adam Henley for becoming a Capcom member and David for becoming a PadRat member. Thank you very much for the support.
I also want to mention, because I'm seeing some people, even though it's super, super late or super, super early, depending on one side of the sleep you are, right? Some people are like, it's still not morning until I go to sleep. But like, I see people from California talking in chat. So just saying, this Crew Dragon Grace will be splashing down off the coast of California. Remember, SpaceX changed the location for splashdowns until I think it was Crew 9 in March. Until Crew 9, they were doing splashdowns of Crew Dragons off the coast of Florida, either on the Gulf Coast or the East Coast, right? However, they changed that. Starting with Fram 2, they're doing now these splashdowns off the coast of California. This one will be off the coast of San Diego, but it's going to fly from the northeast to the southeast, like in that sort of those are the different locations. The one to the south, the one off the coast of San Diego, that's the one that they're targeting. And so they're going to be coming from orbit from the the northwest to the southeast. So if you are in that area, you will see the streak, anywhere from Northern California, Southern California. You may even hear the sonic boom as well. So probably some of your neighbors might be awakening by that. But yeah, if you are out there, just look and try and not right now because it's not happening right now. It's still a bit of ways away. But when it happens, I will definitely try to look out. I don't know
Oh,
about you,
absolutely.
but
Anyone on the West
exactly.
Coast, it is somewhat hard to predict exactly what the visibility would be for the reentry. So if you're on the West Coast, just go outside, give it a look, and when you see the trail of reentry, it is really, really a sight to behold. It's worth a shot to go out and give it a look, especially if you're anywhere near that San Diego area. Give it a
Yep.
shot because it is a really cool experience to see people return from orbit.
And there's the graphic from SpaceX as well, showing that entry. As I said, anywhere off the coast of California, I think even in Northern California, you should be able to see it. I know from the last time, it was a little bit further north when they splashed down. It was Oceanside, but still, roughly Southern California area, right, where they splashed down, and people were able to see that all the way, in San Francisco and things like that. So you should be able, if you are north or even even up there. So you should be able to see it. I definitely will try. If there was a spacecraft full of 4 humans, right, and trying to come back home and things like that, I will definitely go out and see that. Of course, it also depends on the weather.
Yeah, the weather is always a factor as you're looking at the return. I love looking at the graphic here in that bottom right corner, seeing sort of the firing. So we're nearing 40 minutes from splashdown. So you mentioned that deorbit burn. What other things are we able to look forward to here before splashdown?
Well, right now they're still in that the urban burn. As I said, it's a long one. It's 18 minutes long. And so you can, I think on the right hand side they're showing as well some of the pulses that they're seeing from the camera views. Look at that. They're seeing the same sort of pulses. On the bottom right, they also have the engine diagram. The ones, the 4 little dots in the middle, those are the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters. Those are the ones that are doing the deorbit burn right now. And so they flash every now and then because it's not a continuous burn, it's like pulses. So that's why you see them flashing back and forth. But yeah, so once that deorbit burn is complete, hopefully in a few minutes from now, they'll remove the trunk. They'll jettison that. This is a departure from the earlier deorbits when they were doing that off the coast of Florida, where they first jettisoned the trunk, they left it in orbit, and then they did the deorbit burn. Now instead they're going to be coming back with the trunk and then separated before the reentry. Then the spacecraft will reorient itself, heat shield first, go through the reentry. It's going to be about 7 minutes or so until they start the parachute deployment. That you can see the sequence drogue parachutes, approximately 4 minutes or so before the splashdown. Then the main parachutes about a minute after the drogue parachutes, and hopefully about 3 minutes or so on those main parachutes, those 4 big main parachutes, and then a splashdown off the coast of California and the Pacific Ocean. So it's a bit simpler than a rocket launch. Rocket launch, you have staging, you have MECO staging, and like you have the booster landing, and the first stage needs to separate things, whatever, right? This is a lot easier.
One thing that is not easy is they've been busy up there. They've been doing a bunch of science experiments, and 98 Central is wondering sort of how these science experiments get assigned. Is it NASA working with Axiom? But I mean, there's a lot of international cooperation on this mission, and looking around, there are some more NASA focused ones, but there are definitely international experiments going on here, Alex, right?
Yeah, and by the way, by easier I meant like easier to follow, not easier to do. Re-entry from orbit is quite complicated. But yeah, one of the things about this mission is that they just don't go up there and they float around and hee hee ha ha, right? Like that's not the thing that they do. They go up there and they do science, and they use the ISS own laboratories. They have these amazing facilities that were launched many years ago, and state of the art kind of thing in space research, right? And so that's one of the things that they do in collaboration with NASA. NASA says, okay, you want to do this piece of science? We'll give you the hardware and the location to do that. For example, here, the life sciences glove box. I think this is at the Destiny module, if I'm not mistaken, because that's called the US lab module as well. And so they have different locations on the ISS where they can do this science, and so they allocate. NASA that does that. They allocate. Okay, you're doing this research. They plan ahead, of course. It's not that they arrive to the ISS and they're like, okay, you take this. All of that is assigned way earlier while on the ground. And they get trained, in fact, on the ground simulators on the ISS at Houston, for example, to be able to get to know where these experiments will be done and things like that. They've done around 60 of these experiments while they were on the station. So, like, that's a lot. And also, like, research, not research, excuse me, was going to be doing the other one, which is outreach. So, for example, they've been doing interviews with people on the ground, with national TV and things like that, right? To talk to people on their countries and things like that. Here, for example, we see some of that training on the ground, precisely training on those different activities that they need to perform while in orbit.
If you have any questions for us, be sure to at NASASpaceflight in chat, and we will try to get to all of those. I also want to thank Man on Mars for the support, saying, "Go Axiom-4 crew, a woof woof and a rough rough from NSF Space Dogs, Wiley, Cyrus, and Vega Bundo. Wishing a safe reentry and snacks for all." Thank you, Man on Mars. Now, we are getting really close to the next major event in return, which is actually the trunk jettison from the Crew Dragon spacecraft, because of course they're oriented in one direction to fire the thrusters for the deorbit burn, but they jettison the trunk and the capsule itself actually turns around prior to that reentry. So we can still see the thrusters here firing, but they are getting really close to that trunk jettison.
Yeah, and that trunk jettison is also like a two-step approach, because the trunk is connected to the capsule, right? So you have the actual gumdrop shaped kind of capsule, and I just heard that the deorbit burn is complete. So
All right. Of course,
so the deorbit.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Alex.
go ahead. Sorry, I was trying to listen to their comms.
So, of course, once we get closer towards that actual splashdown, that's when the ground views will come into effect. I'm sure SpaceX has all their cameras out in full force for these reentries. I'm seeing lots of different questions from people wondering why Dragon does a water splashdown and wouldn't a land recovery be easier? There are a whole bunch of trade-offs though between doing that splashdown, which makes perhaps recovery slightly more complicated, requiring vessels and the like, and then a land touchdown, which might make certain things easier, but they have more systems to design for in that instance. So, Alex, what are some of the advantages of one versus the other, and why does Dragon go with the splashdown?
Yeah, so there are multiple reasons. By the way, one quick update: that trunk has been jettisoned, so that's good. Now the capsule will reorient itself heat shield first for that entry, but and also like the nose cone needs to be closed as well. So that's one of the things that needs. There we go. They're putting it out now on the graphics. So yeah, there are different trade-offs that you have to take into account when SpaceX created Dragon. At first, it was a cargo spacecraft, and it was a lot easier to just let it splash down in the ocean, because that was like, first, capsule shaped is rather stable on its own. You can in fact see behind Jesse, well, no longer, but behind Jesse, there's like the first Dragon that they flew into orbit on the COTS 1 mission. Thank you, Carson. Sorry for that. But that's one of the things that they tried to do. They went to the safe thing that they could handle while they were a small company, and that is capsule shaped. It's stable on its own, and water landings, because you don't have to think about cushions or thrusters to slow down like Soyuz or anything like that, right? Like you don't need to think about airbags like Starliner, nothing like that. You just have the parachutes and the water does the rest, right? And they brought that with Crew Dragon. Now originally they were trying to also use the escape motors, the Super Draco escape system, to be able to also use that as a landing thruster, essentially. That was phased out from all of the plans for multiple reasons. It is now only as a backup option if the parachutes were to fail. So that's essentially where they are right now, and that's what they did, that trade-off. Of course, they also went to Starship. Starship will have propulsive landing, this whole thing with the flaps, the reusable thermal protection system. So it's a whole different beast, but they are also a much bigger company with lots more experience, right? So they can get into that sort of risk of developing such an ambitious spacecraft rather than, go to the safe and trusted capsule that splashes down on the water.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of trade-offs here. I love seeing this graphic of the ISS and Dragon. You can see like they seem to on the scale of the Earth pretty close together still at this point. But of course, with that deorbit burn having happened, those trajectories will start to differ more and more dramatically. So we've got another question here from 9/8 Central, actually, about the refurbishment of the Dragon capsule. So this time around, they are flying Grace, a new capsule, but of course, they're flying these capsules a whole bunch of times. So they're landing on the West Coast now, but like, where does the refurbishment happen? And then they're launching out of the East Coast.
Yeah, so they, back when they launched the Dragon 1, the older version, the one that is behind Jesse there, they used to do the refurbishment in two different places. Part of it was at McGregor, for example, where they had their own hangar to store them and be able to work, especially on the propulsion systems and whatnot. And then they also did some of that refurbishment at Hawthorne. But when they moved to Dragon 2, both cargo and crew Dragon 2, they moved the refurbishment facilities to Florida to concentrate all of the work there. That way, you refurbish the capsule there, and as soon as it is ready, you just put it out there and get it into launch preparations, right? So at the Cape, they have two different facilities. They have one that they've been using for a long time, which they nicknamed Dragonland, at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station side of the Space Coast. But recently, they had the Hangar X2 building, which has its own area for Dragon refurbishment and processing. So they also have that as well. So they have now two different places to be able to handle the 8 different Dragon 2 capsules that they have on their fleet. Because remember, there are now 5 Crew Dragons and there are 3 Cargo Dragons. And so at least one of them is always in space because they're always keeping one for the crew up there. So it means there are at least like 7 on the ground, always somewhere around the Cape. So once this capsule splashes down, it is recovered, then it is transported by truck all the way to Florida for refurbishment and preparation for its next launch.
Yeah, and of course, we get an aerial view of these facilities at the Cape on occasion. So stay tuned this week, not to spoil too much, but perhaps on Wednesday we'll have some more aerial views of the hangars and all the facilities around the Cape. There's a bunch that's changed. Our the members are getting sneak previews of all that sort of stuff right now, but all of you can stay tuned for actually, I guess that's tomorrow now. Stay tuned.
Yeah, because now it's Tuesday already. At least in the greater parts of the world, maybe everywhere in the world.
Yeah. We are getting closer and closer to launch here. Wow. You can tell that it is morning and I just woke up. To Splashdown here. They are 27 minutes away at this point. They've got they've already closed the nose cone based on that timeline, and so the remaining events are in pretty rapid succession with the drogue parachute deploy, main parachute deploy, and then the splashdown just 4 minutes after that drogue parachute deploy. As they re-enter, there will be a period of comms blackout that they will go through. But we are just waiting. Again, if you have any questions, drop them in chat with @NASASpaceflight. I want to thank PNWUT for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. I also want to thank The Law for the support, saying a special shout out to Savannah watching her first ever reentry from the Bay Area. Keep dreaming big, Savannah. And we
Nice.
also have a question here from John C. wondering if Boeing Starliner will fly with a crew again from the ISS. Now and also thank you for the support there, John. So we saw the crew flight test, and it's been a big question sort of since then. What will the next Starliner mission look like?
Dragon copy. No twenty-two.
There we go.
And great call out there.
They have closed the nose cone and it is secured for entry. That was the call out. Yeah, I mean that question is one that I think everyone has right now. It's like NASA has sort of hinted that the next mission might be a cargo mission rather than a crew mission, to be able to use it sort of like a certification mission, so to speak, to make sure that a lot of the upgrades and fixes work. But yeah, we'll see when that happens, if it happens.
Here's a great question from Saad. We've been seeing more and more crew missions here. Of course, they're up to crew 11 for NASA now. They're saying the same booster that flew Axiom-4 will be flying crew 11. Has a booster ever flown back-to-back human missions? I think Chris B would like me to mention, like, well, Shuttle only flew back-to-back human missions. I think that would earn some approval from Chris B. But I'm sure you have your spreadsheet. I don't want to put you two on the spot. Do you know offhand if we've seen back-to-back crew missions from the same booster before?
Yes, actually, B1061, which was the first booster to be reused on a Falcon 9 Crew Dragon mission, flew first on the Crew 1 mission, and its second flight was on the Crew 2 mission. So yeah, that was the first booster to be reused on a crew mission for Falcon 9, and it was also back to back. So yeah, there's precedent.
Oh, now we're getting a look
Ooh,
at the recovery vessels out there off the California coast.
that should be Shannon. the only one actually now in California. They used to have two for Florida, because in Florida, they either landed on the Gulf side of Florida coast, right, or on the Atlantic side. And so because of the great distances, they needed one boat on one coast and another boat on the other coast. Now there's only one coast of the coast of California, right? And so they only need one. The other one was Megan, also known very earlier in the program as Go Searcher, and it was retired very recently. I think it was like 4 weeks ago.
You always get a bit attached to those vessels, like Mystery and Mischief were sort of iconic views to
Debriefing.
see in
Report when
Port
ready to
Canaveral
copy.
here with their big nets.
Let's see what they say.
Dragon's ready to copy.
Dragon, I have no deltas to the previously briefed times. The vehicle is healthy, weather is still looking good, and recovery forces are on site. Predicted comm blackout starting at 0918 Zulu and ending at 0925 Zulu. How copy?
No deltas to the timeline. Everything's healthy and weather looks good. 0918 to 0925 for the comm blackout.
That's a good readback, Dragon. And with that, I'll be looking for you to verify that tablets are secure, visors are down, and restraints are tightened no later than 150 kilometers.
Dragon copy. Will call.
Make sure your tray tables are in the upright position.
Seatbelt securely fastened. Yeah, so that's that comms blackout we were talking about. So we are about 9 minutes away from the earliest potential start of that, and then another. It'll last about 7 minutes there.
Somebody asking what does it mean when she said no deltas? No deltas mean no differences from what they were expecting. So yeah, it's a very physics engineering term.
Now we're used to seeing a whole bunch of boats and also aircraft capturing these returns. Do we know if NASA's WB-57 is flying this time around? Tom was wondering.
I don't know actually. I think we will have to check that out. But yeah, sometimes it is out there for these missions. But since it is not a NASA mission, it might depend. SpaceX does ask NASA for some of these services, because you can go to NASA and say, hey, can we get your plane here and get some of these data and whatnot? And NASA, on the other hand, it's like, yeah, sure, we need more data, more better, right? That sort of stuff. And so they also are glad to give these services as well, because they also can use some of that data for their for their reentry data and stuff like that. I'm trying to look it up, by the way, as I'm talking.
Getting some great views here of sort of the collaboration, because while this is a private astronaut mission, it's a huge collaboration between Axiom, SpaceX, NASA, and all of the international partners here. So this is the crew out at Johnson.
Actually, there is a WB-57 on hold around the place. Yeah, I just found it on the usual tracker sites for airplanes and whatnot. It's currently holding and flying around the side around, well, The data seems a bit wonky though. It says 18,000 feet. That seems too low, but it's
I
there.
guess we'll
It's
keep an
actually out there.
eye and see if it gains altitude or anything of the like.
Yeah, there it is.
Thank you for that question, Tom. It was really cool to take a look at it. It's not something you WB-57 flights are pretty cool, I have to say.
It's tighten and visors down.
SpaceX copies. Crew are configured for entry. 5 minutes until predicted comm blackout. We'll see you on the other side at 0925 Zulu.
Copy 09250 on the other side of the blackout.
Well, they are ready to go. That's great news.
So we are coming up on the 20-minute mark here, getting far closer.
You can see there the inside of the capsule as they are getting ready for entry. That altitude going down. I really wish we didn't have the entry blackouts because unfortunately it's not that easy to strap a Starlink antenna on the outside of Dragon and have it be able to communicate with Starlink or whatever during re-entry. It's a lot easier on Starship because there's a lot more area to put multiple Starlink antennas actually rather than just one. And when Dragon has been able to use Starlink, it's been because it had the laser links on the trunk. But right now it doesn't have any trunk, right? And it would actually be a very bad day if it had a trunk. So thankfully it is not the case and it was jettisoned after the deorbit burn. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's like, kind of wish that was not the case and we were able to see that live.
Absolutely. It's been impressive seeing Starlink's capabilities during Starship's flights, but the sort of lasers they've integrated with Dragon before have been, to the best of my knowledge, all trunk-based, so at this point they can't even use those when they had them.
Yeah, they have to communicate with ground stations with Dragon. Like even when they have the Starlink lasers as well, it's not always available because you have to point the trunk in the direction of the satellites, right? And depending on where you are in your orbit, you might have to point to a position where, for example, your solar panels will not be pointed at the sun. And that will not be a good idea, right? Where you're prioritizing communications, but also you're losing power. It's like, what should I prioritize, right? But yeah.
So we've got some more questions coming in here. Of course, anyone else with questions at NASASpaceflight in the chat, and we will get to them. But Khalid is wondering how they prepare and simulate for their Dragon reentry.
Ooh, that's actually a good question. So they have these different G simulators, right, to simulate the G's of reentry, the acceleration of reentry. They also play them the sounds that, because they have microphones inside of the capsule, and so they are able to hear because one of the things that happens is that as the spacecraft is re-entering Earth atmosphere, right, it fires the Dracos to keep itself in the right orientation and also use its own body to, because it's capsuled and so it shouldn't have lift, but it does have a little bit of lift, and so it can use that to lessen the G loads, for example. So it fires those thrusters to be able to put itself in the right orientation to use that lift and whatnot. And so a lot of people usually, those that have gone through reentry on Dragon mention that it does become a Dragon when it is time for reentry, because all of those thrusters start firing quite wildly. In fact, we're seeing some of those thrusters already firing there on the right hand side to the bottom on that telemetry screen. And so it just fires wildly, and they put these astronauts during training with that sound that they recorded, so that they are aware of what kind of sounds they'll hear.
I'm sure
So yeah.
Peggy Whitson, of course, already flew Axiom-4, has experienced this, has shared her experience with the whole crew. So they're
Yeah.
able to gain from that sort of industry knowledge, I guess you could say, of having gone through re-entry in that spacecraft type already. Now, to celebrate sort of the re-entry, we've got actually a bunch of products you can check out over at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, starting off, of course, with the Hawaiian shirts. These are incredibly high quality shirts, and there are some fun references in there. If you take a look at these Dragon capsule splashdown shirts, you can see, of course, the Dragon capsule under parachute on reentry, sitting in the water. And if you remember Crew 9, when there were those dolphins sort of just swimming around in the water, we
Yeah.
included dolphins on this. These are really high quality shirts that, I mean, they feel great. They are wonderful to wear, and they're wonderful printing, unlike a lot of any of the sort of cheap Hawaiian shirts. These are proper Hawaiian shirts that are made to last. But if you're not looking for a new Hawaiian shirt at the moment, we also have pretty new product to the store, which are phone cases. So we've got these phone cases for the last several generations of iPhone and Android devices, showing Dragon coming in for splashdown under its 4 parachutes. So shield against splashdown. Great products to check out and share your support of NSF. Now, at this point, we are in the comms blackout for Dragon, so we're sort of waiting to hear those next communications. But this is the time. If you are on the West Coast, go outside. Look for re-entry
Yeah.
here. It is getting closer. So listen on your phone, I suppose, as you go out and try to look for this, because crew re-entries are a sight to behold.
And if you have any, I was gonna say, if you have any pictures, video, or something like that, post it on socials, tag us. NASA Spaceflight in pretty much every single social out there. Then you can see NASA Spaceflight on X, Instagram, NASA Spaceflight, IG as well, NASAspaceflight.com on Facebook. I think it's also on TikTok, if I'm not mistaken. Blue Sky as well, if you fancy that. So there's multiple different places where you can tag us with your pictures and videos and whatnot. We always love to see those. I sometimes get people tagging me like, I capture this and this other thing. And when it comes to people returning from space, that is always cool. Although I guess it's currently a bit hot, right? But yeah, right now it's that moment where we are in that blackout period as the crew re-enters Earth atmosphere. plasma builds up. All of those radio transmissions cannot go through the plasma, unfortunately. So we're just waiting to see where, essentially, once the capsule approaches a little bit more the splashdown site, usually they capture that either from the WB-57 cameras or from the ground cameras. They capture that. D, do you think we're gonna see the dolphins? It's a different place because that was on the Gulf Coast of Florida, right? For Crew 9, but you never know.
I hope we will. That's always really cool when you get to see the recovery team out there working literally on Dragon. And then, I mean, I hope we see the dolphins, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Now, we've got a really great question from Benjamin here, wondering why not use oversized cargo planes like the 747 to transport Dragon? We talked about how they are recovering in California, but they're bringing it back to Florida, of course, to do refurbishment and launch again. So why not fly the Dragon back to California? And also, Benjamin, thank you very much for the support there.
Oh, there we go. A visual on Grace. But to quickly answer that question, it's just probably down to the cost. It's a lot easier to just truck it. It takes a few days, but still, it's not like they really need to quickly turn around the capsule for a launch. Like, oh, we need a crew mission next week or something, right? So they don't need that sort of quick transportation, if you will. But yeah, that was Grace re-entering and coming back home.
I also
for
want to thank
humans.
Timothy, Creed, and Chromatic for each gifting a Red Team membership. Be sure to thank them if you got those
SpaceX
memberships.
ComCheck.
Ooh, ComChecks.
Again, we may not hear the crew until they do get those comms back, that acquisition of signal.
Dragon, SpaceX ComCheck.
Ooh.
SpaceX Dragon, we have you loud and clear.
Dragon, we have you the same. Expect automated chute deployment.
The G-forces.
Dragon copies, automated chute deploy.
And great news, as you heard there, we got comms from the X4 crew.
That's exactly what we're waiting.
Might seem counterintuitive. Oh.
So now they're less than 2 minutes away, potentially, from that drogue parachute deploy. We are getting incredibly close to the splashdown off the California coast this evening.
It might seem counterintuitive, but actually the peak of G-forces happens after they come out of the blackout period.
Verge, expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
Copy. Nominal GPS chute deploy.
Now we're going to hear a lot of comms.
The seats will also rotate to prepare for splashdown, so we should also see that if they keep the internal view. Some people mentioning in chat that they saw it from California.
All right, if you saw it, let me know where you were and when you saw it. I really want to see. I wish I was out there able to watch this with my own eyes.
But you saw one, remember?
Oh, I've seen several. I think I saw Crew 5's return, and then during Polaris Dawn, Max and I went out to Key West to capture the Dragon capsule return. That was an experience.
There we go, seat rotation.
Apparently, it is a bit overcast. I'm seeing some people say, no, it was overcast here, but other people have seen it. 40% of people from California seemingly have seen it. So that really cool. Again, like Alex said earlier, be sure to tag us on social media with any shots you got because we love to see just what the community is able to capture and see.
Oh. There we go.
Those are the drogue parachutes for Crew Dragon Grace.
Yep. Now should be coming up on the 4 mains.
Descent rate nominal.
Look at the speed.
Descent rate nominal, copy.
Is that the moon? I think the telemetry is indicating already main parachute deployment. And now we're seeing it on video. Look at that.
You can see the G's
Right nominal.
rapidly changing.
Copy.
Great.
Main chute descent rate nominal, 1,000 meters for Dragon.
Those look to be 4 good shoots. But it was funny how you could see the slowdown on the telemetry first.
And I see some people in LA saying that the sonic boom just hit LA. That is really cool. I'd love to know if anyone else here heard it.
Copy, 800 meters.
Californians be like, oh, it's a 5-point earthquake or something like that. We don't wake up, but a sonic boom will rattle everyone.
600 meters.
600 meters.
Signal a bit wonky from the WB-57. Hopefully we get some views from closer down to the ocean.
Oh,
Maybe.
yeah. It looks
Ooh,
like that
oh,
cloud
that's
layer.
why. Because there's a cloud layer. Huh?
SpaceX copies,
Wow.
400 meters. Reminder to brace for splashdown.
Classic California. I'm guessing they don't care about the... Ah, look at that. The drogue shoots still coming down.
I feel like that's not a view we often have because at this point we're so... There we go. We have
There we go.
Crew Dragon Grace through the fog. That is quite the view.
Of course, California will have a foggy cruise splashdown. Because, yeah.
And working their way SpaceX and Axiom support teams that will be present for the next phase of our splashdown coverage today. At this point, we'll be waiting for confirmation of the crew's safe landing, and then we'll move into the phases of this mission, which are really, let's recover the vehicle, let's recover the crew, let's make our assessments, and at that point, we'll be covering.
And we have splashdown of the AX-4 crew back on planet Earth.
Welcome home.
welcome home indeed. So now they have the series of smaller.
SpaceX copies Splashdown and Stable 1. On behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
And thanks for the great ride and the safe trip, and Grace is happy to be back.
Have you back home safely as well.
So you can see some of the smaller boats that will approach first before the main recovery vessel is able to get in there next to
SISTI system verifications are in progress. I will report back when recovery personnel are en route.
Yeah, so now you can see.
So we've got a bunch more great questions here. We have space news from, and they are wondering when they stopped doing entry and recovery by Florida, and I'll tack on to that once again why they've moved to these California reentries.
It's interesting because they're panning around, and you can see some of the lights from the city, and the sky glowing orange. But yeah, so the whole reason was because prior to doing these reentries over California, so with Dragon 2, they started doing the splashdowns off the coast of Florida so that they could be closer to the refurbishment and launch facilities, right? So they thought, okay, that's cool. The problem is you cannot do what they did with with Dragon 1. Dragon 1, the version of Dragon that's behind Jesse there. And so what they did with that version was they did the dereturn and then they jettisoned the trunk. So the trunk will just re-enter, a little bit uprange from where the capsule will re-enter, because the capsule has a little bit of lift, and so it can fly a little bit further down range, right? But it will essentially have to re-enter over the ocean. The problem is when you're coming into Florida, there's continental US in the way. If you are coming from the north, for example, if you're coming from the south, you're probably hitting Mexico or the Yucatan Peninsula and things like that, especially if you're splashing in the Gulf. So the way to solve that, they just jettisoned the trunk before the dereturn, and they kept the trunk in orbit. The problem with that is that kept the trunk in orbit as space junk, essentially. And so over time, eventually that orbit decayed due to atmospheric drag, because there's still a little bit of atmosphere up there. And so it came down randomly. It didn't come down over a well-known location, right? And so what that meant was that sometimes some of the pieces of the trunk survived re-entry. And so you may have seen certain reports out there over the past few years where certain parts of Dragon have come down, like the trunk, have come down over Australia, for example, or Canada, or, for example, more recently, North Carolina, right? And so that is not good. And they changed that. And in order to change that, they reverted back to doing the dereturn first, then jettison the trunk. But in order to be able to do that, they needed a huge area of water to be able to commit to that sort of new, or rather come back to the reentry profile that they had previously. And the Pacific Ocean is full of water for that. It's a very nice area to dispose the trunk without hitting land. And so that's why they went back to the West Coast.
We have pulled go for recovery personnel approach. Expect fast boats alongside in 1 minute.
Dragon copies. We'll be waiting.
So when Dragon was descending under its parachute, we had that WB-57 view, which is often like IR. And so Dave and I also saw Bogus in chat wondering, there were a couple bright spots glowing on the parachute on that IR. Are those like reflective IR markers or something to make it easier to find? Do we know anything about those areas on the parachutes?
Probably, yeah, because they have visual markers, right? It would make sense also to have infrared markers as well, so that infrared cameras can also pick that up. Some people were asking why the green and red lights, those are navigation lights for port and starboard, essentially the left or the right hand side of the spacecraft. And if you think spacecraft, because they're in space, they cannot have left and right, they absolutely do. And Crispy will probably be, oh, that's because the British, we used to do that. The green and red lights on ships and something, I don't know. It's been a while since I looked that up.
And I see the videos and photos coming in from all of you watching who happened to see the re-entry from the West Coast. I'm already taking a look at those, and those are really cool. Thank you for sending those along. So, what are the things they're doing right now? I think some of the boats are sort of looking at gathering up the parachutes, maybe, but the other boat that's approaching, they're using gas detectors, right? And they're getting closer and closer to the Dragon capsule. And then eventually, one of them is actually going to get onto the capsule itself, right?
Yeah, the very first thing that they try to do, it's a bit in parallel, as you were mentioning. One of the boats goes out and tries to pick up the parachutes. They reuse sometimes these parachutes, by the way, but at least they do recover them, or try to recover them. And then another team, there you can see there's a guy with a stick, so to speak, right? And they are doing what are called sniff checks, which is very graphic, but it kind of gets the point across, right? Which is they have this detector at the end of this pole, and they approach Dragon to make sure that there are no toxic fumes, because Dragon uses hydrazine and hybrid gulls to be able to power the Draco thrusters. And so they approach the capsule with that sensor, that detector, to make sure that it is good and safe for approach. Usually the water itself acts as sort of like as a neutralizer of that toxic material. So one of the things that you might see, actually, once they pick it up and put it on the boat, is they flush with a hose. They sort of hose the spacecraft with water to remove some of the remaining toxic gases that may be lingering around, because the water does a great job at neutralizing those hypergoals. But yeah, once that's done, then they hop onto the capsule. They start the rigging in preparation for bringing into the capsule into the recovery boat. At the same time, the recovery boat approaches the area, because it's usually a bit further away. That's why they deploy these fast boats. By the way, I just noticed the fast boat itself also has the green and red lights. Even the drone up there, it's also flashing green and red lights.
Yeah, those boats are still keeping their distance for now. But we have a couple different views. This one is, I believe, from Mike Anderson. I think I've seen your name in chat here a couple times too. Look at that view. That's why we always say to go outside, try to take a look at it, because it is just a streak of plasma across the sky.
Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. We have SpaceX flight surgeon standing by. Please confirm crew are ready for post-splashdown PMC.
Dragon copy go, and we are ready for post-PMC.
Copy that, Dragon. The next call you hear will be from Flight Surgeon on Dragon to Ground privatized.
And for those wondering, PMC stands for Private Medical Check. So they have their own private internal communication with a medic to be able to check out like how are you doing after the splashdown and the reentry and whatnot. How do you feel? Are you gonna need any help? Or are you gonna need any special thing, right? But yeah, ooh, more shots. Who's this one from?
This one is from Otto.
Ooh. It says, from the Valley in Los Angeles. We're getting people also on Facebook as well.
That one is from Tom Hall. Tom, thank you so much. Thank you all of you for sending in these photos. It is so cool to see. If y'all are still in chat, I'd love to know more. Where were you? Where'd you go to see this reentry? So these boats are gonna, once again, like Alex said, slowly get closer, and now they're really approaching the capsule to get alongside it. Keep an eye out in that water. See if you spot any dolphins like we had on Crew 9 for sure. And this view is actually from our own Jay DeShetler. Where was that from? That was shot from the Lick observation. It's always so cool because you can see, despite the capsule descending, it visually appears as if it's getting higher in the sky,
Now
just because it's getting so much.
We have you loud and clear on Dragon Ground.
Copy, Dragon. We have you the same.
You can see the colloquial named Dragon Rider up there climbing on the Dragon capsule.
Be advised, we're going to step into transitioning the forward link. COM will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes. Braking continues nominally.
Dragon copies, 5 minutes. LOS.
It's always funny to see how toasted it looks like.
Absolutely. I know we It was always fun seeing them return into the Port Canaveral area, getting that up-close view of the, I guess, toasted marshmallow, as you could say. 'Cause it really does look like one. You can almost see some of the airflow patterns.
Yeah. And that shell, like the actual pressure vessel where the people are living, it's like inside, sort of like a trick of the eye, so to speak, right? All of that you see out there is just a shell that they can remove and replace, and it's made out of a very interestingly named material they call SPAM, which stands for SpaceX Proprietary Ablative Material. And so those are like panels that they can remove. They can access like the interior propulsion systems, the propellant tanks and everything. And they can just, put back new panels. And that's why when they launch one of these, even though they may have flown multiple times into space, they still look, white and clean and everything, and like not toasted, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm seeing from a couple of the people who got shots and saw Dragon re-enter, Mike, whose video we saw first, just walked out front during the comms blackout and looked northwest where the launches came from, and that lined up perspective-wise this time to see that return. And we also have Ray saying it was a beautiful streak from out in front of their house. So that, I mean, that just goes to show, just because you aren't in whatever you might consider the ideal location, wherever you are, it's worth a shot to try to look. What we talk about it with launches all the time. Wherever you are in Florida, step outside, try to see a launch. It can be seen from so far away if you're just looking for it.
And also, if the weather is right, I'm seeing some people that were actually from the San Diego area that they didn't see it because it was cloudy, just as we saw as Grace was parachuting down. But classic California, right? The marine layer and everything, just hiding that descent. There's the boat. Now that rigging, they'll be able to. There's like an A-frame on the back of the boat, and they'll be able to sort of hook that rigging to the A-frame, and the A-frame will be able to lift the capsule on the deck of the boat. There's like a specialized tool that they use to sort of rest the capsule instead of just directly on the deck of the ship. It's on that tool. They call it the Dragon's Nest, and I think it's a very nice name because it kind of looks like a nest for Dragon to sit on. But yeah, and then the Dragon's Nest is also like on chains, so to speak, and they pull those, and so they can make the capsule approach the elevated deck. You can sort of see it at the back of the ship there. There's like an elevated deck, and that's where what they use to be able to help the astronauts out of the capsule. I do wonder what kind of method they're going to be using for the egress, the exit from the capsule. Because sometimes the short duration missions, short in quotes, of course, because this one was it was a few weeks, but still it's short, right? Compared to like 6, 7, 8 months. Usually those long duration missions, they take the astronauts on stretchers because it's been a long time in 0G, right? Whereas shorter missions, usually they can just walk out of the capsule, right? With a bit of help, but it's a short enough time that they can quickly accommodate, and they are not as impeded by the whole staying in 0G thing. So it'll be interesting if they take the stretchers or if they just walk out of the capsule. And Dee, have you? Because I was going for a couple of minutes. Have you talked already about the jump from the rigging person there?
I mentioned the rigging. I did not mention the jump at the end. That's always a fun part. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's always epic. So right now they are waiting for getting closer a little bit to the, rather the opposite, for the recovery ship to be closer to Dragon for the rigging. Then they bring it close, and then they put it on the ship. But before they put it on the ship, of course, the person that is right now sort of hanging from the side of Dragon, you can see it there, that person, they have to get off, right? They're not going to be climbing onto the ship the same way as Dragon, and so they jump off the capsule, and it's always quite fun to see that. Normally they do some kind of, sighing or something, right?
There was also a great moment just like a minute or two ago when they were leaning back, and with the light from the ship in the background, it was just a silhouette of the Dragon capsule and then a person casually standing on the side of it.
Seems like the ocean fauna is currently asleep, because I have not seen at least any dolphins or similar.
No, I've definitely had my eye out for any sea life.
Yeah. You can see now they're rigging it. You can see the folks on each side of the A-frame are pulling on Dragon to bring it closer. See both pulling from those lines. They're literally fishing a Dragon out of the water. Oh, are we gonna see the jump now? Although I think, yeah, now they're gonna be rigging. There we go. There's the other rig. What were you gonna say? Sorry, D.
I just saw the person on Dragon give a wave, and that was, I guess, to receive that line for the remainder of the rigging. We can see that whole structure angling down now.
Yeah, that A-frame. Because, yeah, they hook it up, and that's what they use to be able to lift it out of the water. They're still doing some of the sniff checks? No, it's... Oh, yeah, they're grabbing one of the lines from the side. Okay. Let's see. The capsule is too overexposed, though.
I was about to say, someone drop the exposure bit.
Yeah. Oh, I think they're climbing. Might be doing the jump. There we go.
It's a small thing, but that's always a really fun part of these Dragon returns. And you know what? It gives a crew
is.
member who wouldn't usually potentially have their time in the spotlight a little bit of a spotlight on the important work that is happening behind the scenes that we don't always get to see or hear about.
Should be coming up on that lift. Maybe we'll hear some comms to the crew from the core. Oh, there we go.
SpaceX, rigging is complete. Stand by for capsule lift.
Already underway. Too late.
Yeah.
Dragon copies.
Dragon, SpaceX, capsule lift in progress, brace.
All right, good verbal confirmations there and visual confirmations that we're getting a successful lift.
Dragon copies.
Second liftoff, I guess, for this capsule.
Yeah.
And as they put it down on the nest, you might see some of that water. You can see some of the water in one of the compartments there. That's where the parachutes were located. It's a big empty space, as you can see, because now the parachutes are no longer there. But that water is going to spill. There we go. Slowly. I need to center that a little bit more.
Looks like they're lifting it up a touch again.
There we go. They're adjusting it. Now it looks right. You might see them with a mask there, because as I was saying before, there's still some, probably, you never know, right? There might be still some of those fumes from the hypergoals, right? So one of the things we may see as they move it to the top deck.
Recovery ship. Apology for the delayed call earlier. We're still working to transition the forward link. Recovery personnel are completing their final checks, and I will let you know when we are ready for translation across the deck to the egress platform.
You can also see them plugging the Draco thrusters as well. But you may see them hose down the capsule to also neutralize the toxic fumes, if there were any. The jump. Boop.
Replay. And that is incredibly quick from the moment that person's feet leave the capsule till they are already on board that other boat. That's an incredibly well timed out and planned procedure, despite it looking like just a jump from a floating spacecraft.
Some people mentioning how big Dragon is compared to a human. And yeah, I mean, it's gotta be to be able to hold 4 people for at least a few days in free flight mode, I guess. Now, it's worth mentioning, as I was mentioning before, right, that not all of the capsule is where the people live. Because, for example, a lot of the bottom section of the capsule is just propellant tanks, pressurization tanks, the thrusters themselves, those Draco thrusters, the ones that we see there, angled and whatnot. There's also the Super Dracos, the one on the pods, right? And then inside, that's where the people live. So the actual pressure vessel, as it's called, it's a little bit smaller. It's just like, I don't know, like an airplane. You see the outside, but then there's like layers of protective material and like, the interior of the cabin as well. And things like that. So yeah. Alan L asking, how private is the bathroom area in such a tight space? Not very. They have a curtain, excuse me, a curtain. Jeez, I cannot pronounce that. You know what I mean, right? Private curtain, essentially, and they can sort of hide themselves as they do their things. But yeah.
And we also had a question. Like, originally, Dragon was going to be carrying up to
check.
7 people, but...
We have you loud and clear in Dragon.
Copy that, Dragon. We have you the same. Welcome aboard the recovery ship. We are working to troubleshoot the forward link transition. Stand by for translation across the deck. I'll let you know when we're ready for that.
Okay, copy.
All right, so they're still working on that communication link still. So that's, they said a bit earlier, that is the reason for the delayed call for that lift. But back to that question, Ghost Blackout was wondering, can't it carry 7 people? That was like originally in the plan, but they've only really done these 4-person missions, right?
Yeah, right now the design, when we talked about how the seats rotate and things like that, you can only enable that with 4 people. If you have another 3 people underneath, it gets tight for the seats to be able to rotate upright, for example. So you will need to change the seat design. It's not impossible, right? But you also need to certify that change, and so it's a bit more work essentially. And so SpaceX just didn't feel the need to go through all that. But if there was ever a need for that, maybe they could try and get a modified Dragon with 7 seats. They've also explored, if you will, in the past with the possibility of returning astronauts from, that were launched on Soyuz, instead returning them on Crew Dragon using sort of like a makeshift seat, using like foam and cargo bags and things like that under the main row of seats. But with that, you essentially have a little more room because it's not like a proper seat. So you have a little bit more room, and that still allows for the seats above to rotate and whatnot.
We also had some questions, like, we're getting to see large portions of the team get work done, but BCC was wondering if these are SpaceX people or NASA people or Axiom people. These are mostly SpaceX people, right?
Yeah, for recovery, it's just purely SpaceX. When the crew comes out of the capsule, you may see some representatives of their own space agencies, like ESA, the European Space Agency, or ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization. I think it's the full acronym, right? So you may see some of these folks as well, and also from Axiom as well for Peggy Whitson. So you may see some of them around the deck as they come out of the capsule. Usually, people that know them personally, people that are able to also speak in their own language. Remember that, not all of them, like Peggy Whitson is American, right? But the other 3 are not, and so they also speak the other languages, right? And so it's always good to have that, person that is familiar with them, that represents their agency or their organization.
Complete. Translation across the deck to the egress platform will begin shortly. There is a chance that we get a lot of alarms. No concern.
Dragon copy.
Nice. But yeah, that's what you usually see. The recovery team themselves are SpaceX, but there's usually representatives. It's moving.
It sure is. We are getting closer and closer to that
That's the hosting.
important crew egress.
And yeah, Michael, like sometimes, automated systems don't know that you're manually doing things that it's normal to do. I can give the example, for example, of planes when you start up some planes, they start blaring, the hydraulics are not on or something like that. And it's like, yeah, they're not on because I'm on the ground and I'm still, like, sure. There's an alarm going on, but it's like, yeah, the status, it's okay. There may be like alarms that are meant to alert you when you are, for example, in orbit or something like that. But you're on the ground, you're okay, fine, don't worry. I'm making this comment because somebody was making the point that, an alarm, that shouldn't be nominal, right? Sometimes it is. It's just that, that system alerts you in any occasion, even when you are on the ground and you're fine and you're normal.
So we got a question here from Timothy Creed wondering about some of the experiments that they did on this mission. And there are honestly actually too many to name. There are some sort of human science experiments looking into DNA repair and the like. They're also continuing to participate in stuff like the ISS ham radio program, where people on the ground can use even just handheld radios and directional antennas to communicate all the way with space. There were certain reach out events to get kids interested in science and in space.
Of some smiling faces.
Here we go.
All right, we're looking forward to it.
And also I have here a link where they have like their own website for a lot of this information so that, anybody can look it up on their own. There we can see that hatch opening. But they had so many experiences from like different, because you have different organizations flying here. So Axiom is doing their stuff, ISRO is doing their stuff, et cetera, right? And so there's many experiments here. I'm gonna spam the link in chat so that people can check it out on their own. Again, too many experiments to be in depth here right now, right? But a lot of stuff.
So that frame they're working on right now, is that to like cover the seal as they egress, or do you know what that frame is for?
Yeah, there's a very delicate seal there that they need to protect in between missions. You don't want to have to replace the entire thing because it's very costly. I'm not the one that is building this capsule, but I can imagine that it's very costly to make a good hatch seal, especially with this hatch, which was not opened at any point in the mission because it's up in space. The one that they used to be able to go to the ISS, it's the one on the front. This one on the side is closed off a few hours before the launch, and it doesn't get open until now. So it's a very important hatch to keep closed, right, during the mission. And so if it doesn't get sealed very well, you have a problem. So they protect that. They also they're probably going to be putting their ramps on the bottom so that it is easier for them to step out of the capsule because, there's like steps and whatnot that you have to go through. I think, in fact, that's the... Let's see. And I also think that that person that went in was the medical officer trying to check in on the crew. We may have the camera person sneaking in and trying to get a view. Ha! I think there he goes. Smile for the camera. And now the live stream, maybe? Don't bump your head.
And I saw Ghost Blackout wondering if we know if any of the private space stations that are on the horizon will do similar ham radio participation with the world. I don't think we know for sure one way or another, but I certainly hope that they do, because I think that's a great way to get more people interested in space, talking with space. Like, what cooler thing to say than I talked to astronauts in space?
Yeah. They're now removing the tablets, the packs there with all of the... Because you see the tablets, but then the thick pad there contains the same checklist, but in paper form as a backup. But yeah, they're also should be removing like the footrests and everything from the seats. I wonder if that person with a camera is the live stream camera, because the other one seemed to just be taking photos, whereas this one, I don't know. You're the camera expert though. I'm talking here.
Well, it certainly looks like a video focused rig, but whether or not it's configured for live streaming, it doesn't particularly look like it's set up to be shared live. There we go, though. There we go. Proves me wrong.
I was wondering that.
I didn't see that cable.
Yeah, I was wondering about it precisely because we've seen in the past, right, that they sort of sneak in the camera into the capsule to take a look at the crew. That's nice.
Now, as the crew gets out of the capsule here, they're not just staying on the boat with these recovery teams. These boats have a helicopter pad up top, and so they'll most likely be taking a flight out of there pretty shortly, right, Alex?
Yeah, they take the plane. Oh, the plane. Excuse me, the opposite. A helicopter out of the recovery boat. There's a helipad on top. Seems like they're putting there the ramp that I mentioned before to make exit easier. And yeah, they do that flight. I'm mostly sure now for California Splashdowns they take the flight to Hawthorne, and then from there they go to the different places that they need to go. We'll see who exits first, because sometimes they switch around the order. Like, I've not seen yet a crew mission where they exit in the same order, one mission after the other. It's like sometimes they make the mission specialist exit first and then the pilot and commander. Other times it's like the pilot and commander first, then the mission specialist.
I love how you can still see the other parts of their recovery teams working in the background there.
Yeah. their work is still not done. They still need to do a lot of other maintenance and preparations for the trip back. The recovery ship itself goes to Long Beach, where SpaceX has their recovery operations for the West Coast. That's where the boosters go, where the fairing halves go when they recover those as well. And now also Dragon spacecraft go there. And from there, they're trucked all the way to Florida for refurbishment and preparations for the next launch.
Speaking of that Dragon refurbishment, Creative Bytes is wondering, after each use of Dragon, do they entirely replace the heat shield or just repair it? So what sort of things go into this reflight of Dragon capsules?
Yeah, so for example, as I was mentioning before, that spam material on the outside, the one that makes Dragon look white, right? Again, spam standing for SpaceX proprietary ablative material. They love their acronyms like that. So that, for example, is ablative. It is replaced, and new material is installed for the next launch. The bottom heat shield, the main heat shield that is used to sort of take away the heat of reentry, that is Pika X, phenolic impregnated carbon ablative material, and X for SpaceX. And so the Pika X is also replaced, but there's another lane structure, so to speak, where the Pika is applied. That one can be reused a few times, in fact. So the underlying material can still be reused, but the Pika itself is not. And it looks like we're having the first astronaut out of the capsule. Who is it? Oh, looks like it's Peggy Whitson. And just walking out. No stretchers.
Always great to see.
Such a cool human.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming maybe the next one will be Shokes, the pilot from India. Unless they mix it up again. Because sometimes, at least the most common one is when they pilot and commander exit first, then the mission specialist, or the other way around. Usually in that sequence of pairs, essentially. But they could also mix it, right? Like maybe the commander in one mission specialist and then the pilot in one mission specialist. You never know. I think they mentioned at one point that it also depends on like what's the status of each and every one of them as they accommodate back to gravity. So we'll see who's next. Might be the pilot. Let's see, who's that? About to come out. And that's indeed Shubhanshu Shukla, the pilot of Axiom-4. Also, great smile there. hopefully we get to see him fly again into space on the Gaganyaan spacecraft from India. They're developing their own human spaceflight program. So hopefully, and also their own space station. They're doing a lot of stuff in the next few years. Might take some time because it's quite complicated, right? Getting humans into orbit and whatnot, but still. So yeah, I'm assuming that maybe one of the mission specialists will be next. I mean, that's the only other two remaining as well. But yeah. Do we have any more questions, Dee?
Not at the moment. If y'all have questions, be sure to at NASASpaceflight in the chat. Been trying to go through all of those that we can.
Also, like, I'm seeing people from India, from Poland that are watching this. It's great. I mean, it's really nice when you can feel proud, right, of your country. Oh, hey, there's somebody from my country up there in space. Isn't that cool? Doesn't happen that often from Spain, so I can really vouch for that. Because I feel like that. We only had one person in space from Spain. There's also Michael Lopez Alegria, which also works for Axiom, by the way. But it's like mix of American and Spanish, so it's a bit of half and half, if you will. Still cool when he flies, because he also brings Spanish food and whatnot. So let's see who's next. Hey, Swave. That will be Sławosz. Oh my goodness. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna butcher his name. Sławosz Uznański. There we go. I tried my best. So
it was far better than I would have done.
From Poland. Also part of the European Space Agency. And again, as somebody that studied physics, I always find amazing that he worked at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And next should be Tibor Kapu from Hungary.
The last of the 4 crew members of Axiom-4.
Taking away the stretcher, being like, we're not going to need this.
Now, here's a great question from Creative Bytes, wondering what sort of roles the mission specialists fill. Like, sometimes they might be more focused on one thing or another, but I mean, there are a bunch of mission specialists that focus on their own things. Do we know, like, what did Tibor specifically work on during Axiom-4?
Yeah, it depends. Like, for example, for launch and entry, you've got sometimes the mission specialist sort of back up either the pilot or the commander, whoever is closer, because one mission specialist is close to the pilot, the other is close to the commander. And so they sort of serve as backups as well, looking at the controls, making sure, following the timelines and whatnot. There's Tibor Kapu. Also great smiles, Will. But in other missions, you may see sometimes instead of mission specialists, they're like, medical officer or something like that, right? And so they're maybe specialized in other sorts of things during the mission. And then when they get to the station, they're just flight engineers like everybody else at the station, except for the commander, because the commander has commander of the ISS as the title, right? But Peggy Whitson also becomes a flight engineer and things like that, a spaceflight participant or whatever they want to call it. And so they just focus on their own research, their outreach, essentially what they're certain, what they are meant to be doing on the ISS, essentially. But yeah, it depends. Again, mission specialist roles usually depends on the mission, especially if it's a free fly mission. You often again hear one of them maybe is like medical officer. They're more focused on, you know, paying attention of the medical stuff and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, and thank you all for tuning in here. Also, I want to say thank you for Cody saying, let's go Axiom-4, let's go Grace, let's go SpaceX. And thank you for that support there. Let's see, what did you get from the store? Oh, the swim trunks. Looks like you got a couple things here. Thank you very much for the support, and thank you to all of you who tuned in. Oh yeah, that Hawaiian shirt. We talked about the Hawaiian shirts earlier in this stream. They are incredibly high quality Hawaiian shirt. As the sun starts to rise here on the Space Coast, that is a great way to celebrate this splashdown. And as we look at these views, I want to say thank you, Alex, for being on the stream today.
It's been a pleasure as always. And you know what this means, right? Successful human space flight again for SpaceX, going up, staying in on the ISS, and then coming back down. Next up from that launch pad, from Launch Complex 39A, will be Crew 11 at the end of the month, July 31st. I think it is 12:09 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be an afternoon launch, thankfully, for that mission. But that's next human space flight for SpaceX, carrying another 4 astronauts to the International Space Station for a crew rotation mission. But the next SpaceX launch won't be that. It'll be a Kuiper mission from the neighboring Space Launch Complex 40, which we'll also cover here. You can go to the live tab on our channel and already set up notification for that. So make sure you don't miss that.
Absolutely. I also want to thank Carson for operating today's stream. Thank you so much, Carson. Thank you all for tuning in here. I have been your host, D-Wise. Be sure to check out the NSF socials for all of the latest updates as we get closer to that Kuiper mission, to future crew missions. There is a lot to keep up with, and you don't want to miss a thing. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next time.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
Orange 45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.